Hey, Dr. Go here. I talked to you about putting a video together that kind of discussed where the name Dr. Go came from. The one that stuck, where I ended up putting it on the license plate of my car. To give you an idea of how that name came about. It's kind of funny, maybe to some. It's probably boring to others. But I got to give you a little back history of how that even came to be and what that moment was when I heard that name for the first time. So to tell you about where my life was in my 20s, here's a picture of what I was up to. If you look at right there, Dr. Go, I have painted on the hood of a stock 1980 El Tigre Arctic Cat racing snowmobile. And that is a factory 440 modified factory sled. 1976, the last year Mercury made the Snow Twister, which was a pretty legendary sled. The stock one, the following year was the first year the snowmobile clocked 100 miles per hour on a radar. I put updates on my sled that was older to match that. So that key number of 100 miles per hour was always kind of a target. I'm sure most of you enjoy when you can cross over 100 when you're doing a recreational sport. But the Mercury Snow Twister was factory modified for oval racing. It did not have the factory racing oval bars on it. It had standard bars for drag racing, but I oval raced it and drag raced it. Very much amateur on everything. Not a superstar in any of it. I just enjoyed some local racing. But the red line on the Arctic Cat was 8,250 RPMs. And in perspective, the clutch engagement of that Mercury 440 Snow Twister didn't start to move until 8,000 RPMs. It would run about 11.4, 11.5 thousand. Had stinger pipes on it that would make you go deaf if you forgot your earplugs. And the factory modified the manual in there and crossed out the octane and said run 122 octane minimum for performance. So for a little 440 engine, it had 44 millimeter carbs on it. And my 500 stock engine had 38 millimeter carbs on it. And the year before, their 440 had only 34 millimeter carbs on it. So needless to say, that thing was a banshee, and it would really go. And here was the result of my last race. I broke the suspension in it. I wondered why it was dragging on the ground and wouldn't go, and then would hook up. I came to the side to lift up to see what was going on, and the suspension stayed on the ground, and the tubes at the top came out because the back little receiver sleeves broke. And so the thing was collapsed, and it was dragging on the chassis the whole time I oval raced it. So anyway, that was the end of my racing days. But so that was part of the story of my youth, that I enjoyed snowmobile racing. And then in my recreational weekends, I bought that motorcycle from my brother, who modified it. That's a 1977 Kawasaki KZ 650 Custom, which of course he chromed it, he blackened the motor, he took this thing apart, clear coated the frame, just did every detail, and then he bought every single part for that quarter fairing off the Z1R 1000, and he used the old-fashioned fish machine back at the bike dealer, where they looked up every screw, every washer, because there was not a kit. You weren't supposed to do it. It was just replacement parts. He ordered every darn single part, including gauges and handlebars, whatever. I don't even know, hundreds of little trinket parts. Took it apart and made that bike look like that. And so when I would go ride that thing back in the day, it had triple disc brakes. And the 900s only had a single brake and a drum brake. And we had a friend drill those discs out. And it was kind of a showstopper for its day in 1977. People would come and look at that bike, even though they were driving thousands. They'd come look at this little 650 and say, what the heck is that thing? So anything that I had, was I was not a racer guy, just enjoyed the performance. But I enjoyed doing my performance off the street, where I could legally do the things I want to do. And here's part of where the nickname of Dr. Go came from, was based on this boat with that nickname, Slingshot, with a Tasmanian devil there. My brother and I painted that on that boat. It was a boat we shared, because when that boat takes off, it's so light in the front, it just goes like this trying to plane off. It goes almost to the sky. And when it finally falls over, there's no weight to it. When it lands, man, does that thing launch. And I just said to him, I said, I don't know what we should call this boat, but it seems to feel like a slingshot when you go out there. So we had a friend paint the crude Tasmanian devil on there in the old fork of a tree like you would see in the cartoons. And you pull yourself back there and you go flying through the air. So that was our little joke, that was the slingshot. And here's a picture of it from the back. So you see that big 30-inch prop on there, and that's a hydraulic transom it's mounted to, which people in boating know. That raises the motor straight up off the transom, so that way that lower unit can run half under the water and half of that propeller runs out of the water. And that way you can really get that boat to fly. If you ever go to screamandfly.com, take a look at some of the stuff on there. The idea is that you fly a boat like you fly a plane. You get the boat lifted up in the air, you get air packed under it, it keeps raising the boat until you're riding just on the back pad, maybe a couple foot of boat by 6 or 8 inches wide, and you literally are flying the boat like how you land or take a plane off. You're just trying to balance the back on the water. People who are really into boating know all about that stuff. Well, my brother and I were boat nuts, so we were kind of going crazy with trying to set that thing up to do as fast as we could get it. So that's what it looks like. That's a 18-foot V-King Hydrostream with a 200 Merc on the back of it. So through the years, setting that thing up and refining it. Anyway, we bought the boat new, got it set up, got it broke in, got it running, enjoyed what it did, and the speedometer would go to 80 miles an hour. We didn't get a faster one than that. It's what it came with. And the peg for the needle would stop at about maybe 82 or 83 miles an hour, the position where the pin, where the needle would land on it. So my brother, being the genius that he is, he's the mechanic guy. I am not. He says, well, you know, we can disconnect that rev limiter. Those motors will run all day long. The 5800 was supposed to be about redline. He says, oh man, they run those all day long. Let's just disconnect the rev limiter and see how far we can wind that thing up. It's like, okay. So you easily can pin that needle at past 80 miles an hour and it hits the peg. And then I'm looking at the RPMs and going, hey, this thing is still climbing quite a bit. I mean, we are barely getting, I don't know, I'm guessing here. We were probably in the 5,800 to 6,200 RPMs or whatever when we were pegging that needle. And we rode it out to 7,000, sometimes 71, 7,200 if with perfect conditions. So of course I have to come home and get the calculator out, do all the formulas on gear ratio, and 30-inch pitch means it goes 30 inches through the water if it was jello and not slipping. But then you have to do a slip factor, I don't know, 10 or 12% slippage. But anyway, it calculated into perhaps the low 90s. We were pretty pleased with the boat, but we were always like, darn, I just wish it would have hit 100. But we just didn't have the right stuff to make it 100 miles an hour. People now have gone way past that. But we're talking 1982. So we were doing pretty well because the average outboard boat was probably, that was high speed, 50, 60, maybe you had the 70, 75 mile per hour boat. You really had to get into some serious people to start moving faster than that. So needless to say, it surprised a lot of standard stock jet boat guys that had big 455 holes, but those might have been 65 to 72 mile per hour boats. Never dreaming this slingshot could go the way it would go. I timed it with a stopwatch when my brother was driving. 30 miles per hour to 60 miles per hour in 3.8 seconds. Very quick. So needless to say, when someone would line up alongside that boat with a jet boat and hit the throttle, slingshot was gone. And most lakes that I was on was not big. Even if they would have had a boat faster, I was so quick I could have got to the other side, shut down and waited for them. And yet if we'd had a mile or two, certainly there were boats that, serious boats out there could go right on by, but most recreational boats never saw what hit them. So I didn't try to challenge the people who really knew what they were doing. I didn't see any blowers on boats or turbos on boats. I didn't go kicking the cat. Usually they saw my boat and showed up by me, egging me on. So I had to oblige. So nonetheless, I am now back to where the nickname came from. A couple more things. that shows how crazy I am. I do water skip snowmobiles. Back in the day, and even way back in the day, this is back in the 80s, in the winter, that's me water skiing across an open spot in the river behind my brother pulling me on a snowmobile. And again, the need for speed goes back. That's me in the boat I built in high school in woodshop with a 20-horse Merc. I could get about 47 miles per hour out of that thing. And there it is. That's what I built. So anyway, back to the grown-up days after high school with that faster equipment. I'm riding to work with my friend, and he's asking about the weekends. Like, oh, by the way, he says, you guys got that boat you were talking about for so long and set up. Says, how's that going? I said, hey, we love the boat, except we're a little disappointed in one thing. He said, what do you mean disappointed? What's wrong? I said, well, we were hoping to hit 100 miles an hour. And I said, I don't think we're high 80s, maybe low 90s, but I don't think we can hit 100. We'd have to get into racing stuff and really modify it. And I don't want to do that. I want to water ski and play around with it. So other than that disappointment, I said, I'm pretty pleased with it. He looks at me and says, dude, there is something wrong with you. You have got this obsession with speed. He says, everything you got goes over 100 miles an hour. I said, yeah, everything except that boat. That's what I was hoping. And he says, man, I ought to call you Dr.Go. And the second he said that, the first thought to my head was I turned back and said, yeah, the surgeon of speed. And we just laughed so hard. I said, well, I'm not obsessed. I said, but anyone who loves performance loves performance. And they love to, if I can get 50, I want to get 55. Whatever it is, we all know the disease. But I try to keep my stuff on the water, on the racetrack and stuff, because as you knew from earlier videos, I had high-risk insurance, and driving station wagons was no way to be a drag racer or whatever with a car. So I am into cars, and eventually I'll get to the cars videos that down the road. But anyway, that's how I got the nickname Dr.Go, the surgeon of speed. And it stuck enough that I painted it on the hood of my snowmobile just as a joke. And somehow that lasted through the years. And I think the bigger part of that joke is some people only knew me, like at work, with this nickname, Dr.Go. They didn't even know who I was. Like, hey, there's Dr.Go. And one day I'm in my young 20s. I am at the Ace Hardware store with a Chevy Caprice wagon with paneling down the sides. And I'm lifting a carpet cleaning rental tool in the back because I'm cleaning my apartment's carpeting. Or my first house, rather. And as I'm loading that up, a guy from work that I only saw at work comes walking across the parking lot. I turn around and he sees me. He's like, oh my gosh. He says, Dr.Go drives a station wagon? And I looked at him and I said, hey, Dr.Go has to remodel houses. Dr.Go goes camping. I tow trailers. I said, I need room. I got kids. It's like, yeah, I might have this obsession with speed and I have some performance stuff. I said, but the bottom line is I'm just a regular guy that goes to work and does stuff, and I need to haul. And remember, those wagons would haul 4x8 sheets of plywood. So that was kind of like your inexpensive Suburban back in the day. So nonetheless, that's how I got the nickname Dr.Go. And most of the time, my friends that know me, only a few by it, it's just a joke, a laugh. There's no ego. I'm no superstar. I was never a serious racer, never professional, never went to Eagle River. Always thought it would be fun, but reality is raising kids, and real life is like, I don't know, $6 or $8 a gallon for race fuel back in the 80s for the 126 octane was a little intense. And I realized I had other things to do. So I just dabble in and out of performance. I still barefoot water ski since I was 13 years old. In fact, I barefoot water ski behind those snowmobiles when we water skip them in the summer. But I kind of retired from that when I was in my mid-50s. I don't think I probably should go back to doing that. But nonetheless, we all get a nickname. I don't know. How did you get yours? Sometimes they just stick, and might only be 10 people that know you by that, but it makes for a good laugh. And at least when they see you on the license plate, they go, well, there's an old crazy dude, Dr.Go. So hopefully you guys have fun with your own nicknames, and I hope there's they're dear to you. These are dear to me. That was a good friend of mine, and it just kind of brings back some memories. It's more of a memory lane thing when I hear it than oh man, I'm some superstar. I'm not. I'm just Grandpa still can't let go of his addiction for speed. Let's stay safe and enjoy our hobbies. You guys take care.